Since moving on from Dwight Howard, the Orlando Magic have found little to no success as an NBA franchise, watching their Florida counterparts, the Miami Heat, make multiple NBA Finals appearances in two different eras. But their luck quickly turned around after drafting and developing Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero into two all-star caliber players. And after pushing the Cleveland Cavaliers to a 7-game series in the first round of the playoffs in 2024, many expected the Magic to take a leap and enter the 2025 regular season as a dark horse contender. But instead, we've seen almost the exact opposite happen. With lengthy injuries to Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs, one could easily chalk up the Magic's struggles to freak oblique injuries and bad timing. But after capturing only 4 wins in their last 11 games with Paolo and Franz back in the lineup, there's a bigger problem that we need to discuss that could ruin this franchise's future. And that problem starts with a man named Jeff Weltman, the Orlando Magic's president of basketball operations since 2017, who has been the executive behind the Magic's past 8 seasons of roster moves and coaching changes. And since 2017, these are the players he has used a top 20 first-round pick on. In 2017, it was Jonathan Isaac. In 2018, Mo Bamba. In 2019, Chuma Okeke. In 2020, Cole Anthony. In 2021, Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner. In 2022, Paolo Banchero. In 2023, Anthony Black and Jet Howard. And in 2024, Tristan da Silva. Do you know the thing that all but 2 of these players have in common? Out of the 10 players drafted with a top 20 pick since 2017, only 2 have shot 37% or better from 3 in their college careers. That being Chuma Okeke, who isn't with the team anymore and when he was, couldn't get over the 32% mark from 3, and rookie Tristan da Silva. You'd think with 6 top 10 picks in the last 8 years that you would draft someone who can hit the most important shot in the modern NBA. But Weltman has somehow failed to do that. And as a result, the Magic look miserable on offense. As of February 17th, the Magic have the worst scoring offense in the NBA, averaging only 104 points per game and an abysmal 1.07 points per possession. Those stats are highlighted on a nightly basis, where the Magic struggle to keep up with the high-powered offenses near the top and the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And it's not from a lack of trying either. The Magic's top 2 guys have been lights out for stretches of this season, and while they're still getting back into in-game shape from their injuries, their supporting cast has done next to nothing to help them, specifically when spacing the floor. What Paolo and Franz bring on a nightly basis is special, but what would make it even more special is the proper amount of room to operate. Outside of new acquisition Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and nominee for the How Are You Still in the NBA award, Gary Harris, no player on the Orlando Magic has a career average of 36% or above from 3. On a roster of 17 players, how do you only have 2 who can shoot the ball effectively? And because Gary Harris doesn't play much, and KCP is having one of the worst seasons of his career, there isn't a threat from beyond the arc on this team, which completely shuts them down offensively, especially in crunch time, where you can just collapse the defense in the paint and stop the drive. Because ultimately, the paint and mid-range are the areas where Paolo and Franz are their most effective. They're both in the top 50 in drives per game and take a combined 12 shots a night solely off of driving to the rim. And if they had proper shooting, they would be able to attract a second defender in the paint or mid-range and kick it out to the perimeter for an open shot. That's the formula that almost every good NBA team has perfected, but it's impossible to do that when your starting guards make a combined 2.4 threes a night. The Magic have too many players who rely on the mid-range jumper and baskets at the rim to be an effective offense. And because you already have 2 guys in Paolo and Franz who almost exclusively use that area offensively, it's time to make some changes at the guard and center positions so the Magic don't continue to shoot 30.6% from 3 as a team, by far the lowest percentage in the NBA. And this once again falls on the shoulders of the Magic's front office, specifically Jeff Weltman, who hasn't acquired a player in a trade since Patrick Beverley in the 2023 trade deadline. You can't expect your team to succeed while setting them up with poor spacing and complete non-factors offensively. Which brings me to my next point, being that the Magic take too many chances on projects in the NBA draft. I already listed off the first-round picks the Magic have taken in the last 8 years, and over half of those were used on guys who had the potential to be great two-way players. You think of Jonathan Isaac, Chuma Okeke, Anthony Black, Jet Howard. All of those guys had the skills to be good defenders in the NBA, but had work to do on the offensive side of the ball. I still hold out hope for Anthony Black to become a good playmaker and shot creator in this league, but those other guys I'm almost entirely out on that side of the ball. And if you're not making trades to solidify your roster, and your draft picks are continuously falling out of the league because they can't hit a shot, how is your team getting better? This isn't a video game where players progress at a linear rate, and that rookie that you've been sitting for 2 years is suddenly in the rotation and can hit a jump shot. This is real life, where young players need game reps to get better, and the Orlando Magic have failed in developing their young promising talent time and time again. And in order for this franchise to capitalize on the timeline they have with Paolo and Franz, they need to act sooner rather than later. But what kills me every time with this team is that the opportunity is there. For the past 2 seasons, a guy like Anthony Simons has been wasting his talent in Portland when he would be the perfect fit for Orlando. Or even a guy like Colin Sexton in Utah, who has had a quietly underrated season. He would be a piece that you wouldn't even have to give up too much for. You have the draft capital and the young pieces that some team would take a chance on, so why not swing for the fences? We saw it earlier this season with De'Aaron Fox getting traded to San Antonio. We saw it in Dallas when they paired Luka with Kristaps Porzingis and eventually Kyrie Irving. It doesn't even have to be an all-star caliber player, just someone who can reliably hit a jump shot. Because when you have players as talented as Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, you capitalize on the rookie deals and their timeline, and you put pieces around them to where you can succeed. And I appreciate what this front office did by signing KCP, but that move has looked like an utter failure. And even if he were the 40% three-point shooter that he was in Denver, that would change next to nothing about this team. Am I overreacting to the 50-plus games I've seen from Orlando? Maybe so, but front office incompetency is inexcusable in 2025 when you have all the available resources with advanced stats and direct feedback from your players to tell you what's wrong with this team. Almost every Orlando Magic fan who has watched even one game of the season would tell you the problems with this team. But somehow the guy who gets paid to construct the roster doesn't understand that his process is hurting the team's future. The biggest discourse around Paolo and Franz is their inefficiency. But if you watch these games, you'll understand that, like I've said before, they don't have the space inside the arc to operate. When you have Gogo Badatse in the paint, who, don't get me wrong, has been great this season, but takes up a lot of space because he's limited in what he can do offensively, it makes sense why Paolo is shooting only 43% from the field, though I will say his shot selection is sometimes questionable, and he settles a lot with long mid-ranges. But when you don't have a primary playmaker or reliable shooting options on the perimeter, it makes sense why Paolo settles for tough shots so much. But ultimately, that's going to hurt his progression in the long run. If you install the idea to Paolo and Franz that they have to carry the entire workload offensively, when they get competent pieces around them, this mindset is going to be hard to shake. Those tough shots these guys take won't just disappear magically from their arsenal. So when the Magic inevitably make that move, it's going to be a process to get this offense going. But when it does, Orlando would be right back into contention. But with all this talk about improving the offense, I guess a question that needs to be considered is how much offense can you sacrifice while keeping up a top 5 defense? The projects that the Orlando Magic have invested in were all lengthy wings who could defend. And while they can't do anything offensively, they have the ability to lock up the top guards and wings in the NBA. And as a result, the Magic allow the second least points per game at 105.4, and the third least amount in points per possessions at 1.09 per possession. The Magic have built a culture focused around defense, and that's great. Having an identity is the key to winning basketball games. But when your identity completely disregards one side of the ball, as the Magic's does, then it's a problem. That's why my solution would be to move on from 2 guys who have been inconsistent and unreliable health-wise for far too long. That being Wendell Carter and Jonathan Isaac. Of course, you can't just move on from a combined $30 million worth of contracts in an instant, but there's a market for those 2 guys depending on the team and the picks attached with these players. The preferred destination for these guys would be Portland for Anthony Simons, or maybe a CJ McCollum if you offered a young piece along with the proper contracts, though I'm not sure New Orleans needs any more young pieces. Just finding a consistent perimeter scoring option, or even another reliable three-point shooter, which isn't expensive by the way, could unlock a completely different Magic team that catapults them into contention. The panic meters shouldn't be too high in Orlando for now, but knowing this front office's history with complacency, maybe this season is just a sign of things to come. Or maybe you just throw this year away and start over fresh next season with a similar core and hope things can turn around. Comment below what you think of this Magic team and what moves you think they need to make. And make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more NBA videos just like this one. So with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.